Gene Bouts, lived in Claremont, Florida, and he only lived to be 91. But anyway, he would show us how to use the little ends. And maybe somebody taught him, I don't know. But he'd always say, don't forget your icicles. So he'd turn these little ends into icicles.
Oh.
And so then that way you don't waste any of them. The clear ones we usually sell for $1 and or $1.25, and then the colored ones are about $3. I sell out of them every year. I never have enough because I don't make them special. I just use them for the ends. And then fire polish this. And voila, we have a little sparkles. And now on some of them that are a little bit bigger like this, then I take and add little dots of color onto that. And with the little dots of color, then it looks like a miniature ornament. So this is the same thing that I'm doing for the other ornament. And when I'm working on this, you can't stop in the middle. So if I would stop, in the middle of, say, adding those dots of color on, then the piece would crack. So once I put the color on there, I have to continue until I've melted it in a little bit. Another kind of unusual thing about me is that in addition to, this is considered flame working, what I'm doing this evening, but I also do the furnace glass blowing. Now, to tell you the difference on the furnace glass blowing, if you imagine a bathtub full of honey, except that it's 2,000 degrees. Okay. Now, instead of using a little wooden stick to dip into it, you're using something that's about the size of a broomstick, and it's metal and hollow, and that's how you get glass on the end of the blowpipe. And then you continuously turn that, just as you would honey on a wooden stick, and then blow into it. And that's how you would start the initial bubble on furnace glass blowing. Then you might roll it in some glass that's crunched up. It's called frit, F-R-I-T. And it might be as small as, sugar, or it might be as big as rock salt, and maybe different colors. And you can see the bulbs down at the very end there, and then there's a multicolored piece. Those have all been rolled in frit, as well as this multicolored piece here too. And feel free to take one of those and just pass them around. I don't mind. I always like for people to handle and play with the glass. Yeah, grab one of those. So you can see it was rolled in white glass, smaller chunks of white, and then bigger chunks of red. So yeah, I can get to about maybe an inch or so, and holding. My flame is around 3,500 to 4,000 degrees.
Wow.
So
how much would you sell that little tiny ornament one?
These sell for $3.
Do you ever burn yourself?
Yes, sometimes when I'm working with dangerous things like the stove or the iron. Yeah. Now I do cut myself on a regular basis. Yes, I have burnt myself, but not too often. Usually, if you're kind of paying attention and you don't get too distracted, you don't usually burn yourself. It can happen. And I've always told my students when it does happen, it will happen eventually at some point. But just take and put your fingers, it's usually your fingers, put them in water for half an hour. And that really, cold water, not running water, just cold water for half an hour. And you'll find that that really does make a huge difference. So right now I'm going to make a latticino cane. Okay? Now in furnace glass blowing, instead of 2 hands, I would be using 2 people.
Okay.
So you've probably maybe seen this done on PBS specials. But what I'm going to do now is twist in opposite directions. And so you can see how molten the glass is right now. It's really very, very mobile. But that only lasts for a very short time.
I see. That is amazing. And where'd the name come from?
Latticino cane, yeah. Then this might officially be like Zempirico, or they have different names. I'm kind of loosely using Latticino because that's what most people recognize. But officially in Italian, there's a specific name for each different kind of cane.
Okay.
So I may not have the exact name for the exact cane. When I first learned, we always just called everything Latticino cane. But officially, this might be Zempirico or a different one. because there's canes where you put pieces of white on the outside of it and then twist that, and there's pieces where you start with a white on the inside and make it like a ribbon, and then put white around the outside, and those all have different names.
Yeah.
So rather than be overly specific on it, I kind of use it in a general term.
Okay.
And no, I really don't speak any Italian. Buongiorno, come va? Molto bene?
I'd love to, but I don't know.
I just haven't really ever learned. I have been fortunate enough to go to Venice and to Murano a few times to be able to study and learn from people. And maybe this coming June, we'll be having Lucio Babacco come back. Lucio is known as the #1 figurative maker in the world.
Oh my.
And he's from Murano, from Venice, Italy. And so we may have him coming. Okay, when I teach people, this is a bead. This is the first bead that I normally teach you. Can everybody see that okay?
Yeah.
All right. Now you'll see that it looks like a clear bead. That's because it's hot. Did you see it change? Mm-hmm. Okay, so that might be your first bead. So now I'll show you a slightly more complicated bead. You know, or you might put like little dots on it. When I show people how to do dots, oftentimes we start off with like little white dots. So we do little white dots all the way around the bead like this.
Is that called lamp glass?
Lamp working, yeah. And so here's little white dots on it.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and melt those in and show you a little bigger bead. Yeah, this used to be done over what they considered like little lamps. So they would actually, they might use kerosene and put water on top of the kerosene so that it didn't explode. But they would actually like have bellows underneath the table, so you can imagine pumping bellows instead of using oxygen, kind of like, you know, a kick wheel.
Sewing.
And you'd be pumping the bellows in order to keep the air flowing over or through the ports, and then
Or like a blacksmith thing.
yeah, a little bit like that.
Wow.
At least that's how they did it probably. I want to say maybe around the 1800s. If you consider glassworking in general, they really don't know when glassworking started. They found stuff dating back to about 5,000 years, you know, Mesopotamia, which I guess is modern day Iraq. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is the way we change the glass. We call this a marver, M-A-R-V-E-R. It may have come from marble. Maybe the Italians rolled it on marble. I don't really know. But that's marvering the glass. And you might call it a paint scraper or putty knife. But that's what it is in another life. But this is what it is here. And right now I've switched glasses, so you may notice I've been spending a little bit more time as I'm warming the glass up. I don't immediately go right into the fire. I've slowed down just a little bit because if I pop this glass into the fire, this is a soda lime glass, and it expands and contracts more. In fact, they have ways of measuring the glass, and they call it the coefficient of expansion, the COE of the glass. And so that's how they can tell on some different glasses. So here would be like a little one with red bumps on it. So let's just say you didn't want red bumps, you maybe wanted them flat. So we'll melt them in. So the COE of this soda lime glass that I'm using right now is 104. If you added lead to glass, or lead to like sand to make it melt at a lower temperature, you'd end up with lead crystal glass. And so then its COE might be about 90. Or 90, you know, around 90, 96, but probably 90. The borosilicate glass, what I used before, Pyrex, here's it all flat, so you can see that. Okay, its coefficient of expansion is 33. So now I'm going to change this. Let's say you didn't want just little, you know, red dots on here. You want a different pattern. So I'm using a tungsten pick. I never tell more than 100 people at a time. It's my secret tool. And basically I'm heating up each little dot 2 times And the first time I'm bringing some of the white glass down into the red, and the second time the red glass down into the white. So then you end up with the little red dots